Hey everybody, welcome to this week's video. This week's parsha is Chukat. I think that Chukat is one of the most interesting parshas of the Torah, not because of what it says, but because of what it doesn't say. Let me explain. Chukat is in the middle of the book of Numbers. And if you've read the book of Numbers, you'll know that there's a lot of complaining. And then in the middle of this week's parsha, let's have a look. I've got the book over here. We are in chapter 19. Chapter 20, verse 1. The Jewish people arrived on the first month, and Kadesh and Miriam died. When did this happen? Well, I've got news for you. Last week's parsha, the story of Korach, takes place in the second year after the Exodus. This section takes place almost at the 40th year. What happened in between? Torah doesn't tell us. In one verse, we go 38 years ahead. Boom! Flying ahead. What happened? Probably nothing that's so important for us to know. We can try to delve into the last parsha in Bamidbar, where it describes all the journeys of the people. We can derive a little bit of what was going on there. But I like to use this to explain that the Torah is not a history book. The Ramban, Nachmanides, famously says that the Torah is not a history book, and if it was, it would be a bad one. And here's an example. The Jews wander in the desert for 40 years, and we know nothing about the overwhelming majority of those years. In fact, in Kadesh, they were in Kadesh for 19 years. And they went back to Kadesh, they went away. It's a whole thing. We don't know much about what happened. And the explanation is that the Torah is a book of lessons, of teachings. Torah means guide, instruction. It's not a history book. So that's why I find this parsha to be very interesting, pretty fascinating, because it's where we skip 38 years. It's really a cool kind of secret over there. But I want to jump to the very end of the parsha. Now they're moving closer to the land of Israel, and they have a few these tribal areas, cities that are turning out to be pretty complicated. One of them is the Amorites, Sichon. Sichon had a brother, Og. These two brothers, if they weren't biological brothers, they were friends and similar. The rabbis tell us they were brothers. Sichon is the king of the Amorites. And the Jewish people want to pass through, and they don't let them. Not only do they not let them, but they go out to war, and Moshe obliterates the Amorites. He leads the people in battle, and they obliterate the Amorites. Then they have to conquer Bashan. Now, Bashan, the Torah tells us that Og, the king of Bashan, who was a giant, comes out to war. And God tells Moses, don't be afraid. You're going to do just like you did to Sichon. Wait a second. God didn't tell him, don't be afraid with Sichon. Why, when it comes to Og, is Moshe afraid? Who said he was afraid? Rashi says to us, from Midrash, Rashi says, Moses was afraid. In his heart, he was afraid because Og was a very old man. He lived in the time of Abraham. And he was the one who informed Abraham that his nephew Lot had been captured by the four kings. And he essentially rescued Lot. And in that merit, Moshe says, maybe we won't overcome him. But if you look at the Midrash, it doesn't say that Moshe was afraid. It says that Moshe was afraid in his heart. So that's why it doesn't tell us that Moshe said, I'm afraid. God knew Moshe was afraid in his heart. Somewhere deep inside, he had a fear. But it wasn't visible. He didn't tell it to anybody. So the Rebbe points this out. And he says, why wouldn't Moshe have told this? Why did he put on this tough leader face? Let him tell the people, folks, I don't think we can do this one. So the Rebbe explains that that's not what a leader does. Moshe is the leader of the people. He needs to inspire. He cannot present himself as weak because he will weaken others. Moshe embodies the people. Moshe cares deeply for the people. Moshe cannot bring weakness to the people. And therefore, it's only in his heart. Somewhere deep inside, he has this idea that maybe Og will have a merit, and that will make it that the people will not overcome Og and his Bashan society. And God said, don't worry, you got this, Moshe. So later this week, in this coming few days, we have the 12th of Tammuz. In 1927, the Rebbe at the time, Rabbi Yosef Yitzchak, my namesake, was arrested by communist Russia. And he was sentenced to death. Why was he sentenced to death? He was sentenced to death because he was engaged in illegal activities. What were those illegal activities? Opening Jewish schools, building a mikveh, maintaining synagogues, sending out people to strengthen Judaism throughout Russia. Very illegal. And on the third day of Tammuz, they changed his sentence to 3 years in exile in Kostrama, some faraway place. And then on the 12th of Tammuz, after immense pressure, the whole thing was commuted and he was let free. So, as you can imagine, for the Hasidim, it's a great day of celebration. But there was one thing, in one way, you saw that the Rebbe, Rabbi Yosef Yitzchak Schneerson, we call him the Frierdiker Rebbe, the previous Rebbe, sort of was exactly like Moses. When he was arrested, he went with an attitude, I am not afraid. They are not going to make me afraid. I am not going to show any fear. And in fact, he told them, when they threatened him with a gun, and they said that this tool can make people speak, he turned to them and said, yes, people who have one world, that'll make them speak. But I have two worlds, this world and the world to come. That doesn't make me speak. That doesn't make me afraid. He went with strength, with absolute fortitude. He was not going to give in an inch to the demands of these thugs. And that is what helped him overcome the challenges of being arrested. He was not going to give in. He was not going to show fear. And he wrote a diary about this, which I encourage you to read. Beautiful, very interesting diary about the experience and how he had absolute mastered control to ensure that he did not express any fear to these people. Because the Rebbe knew that the fear that he might show will translate to others being afraid to keep their Yiddishkeit alive. Like Moses. Maybe he kept it in his heart, but he would not express that fear to the people. So there's a little thought for the Parsha. May we inspire others to be strong and to go forward in our Yiddishkeit and not be afraid. Because God is with us, as he tells Moshe, Ki biyadcha, in your hands I have given him to you. Do not be afraid. Al tira, Do not be afraid. Stay strong. Chazak. Good Shabbos.